This is When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, where I look at the films that influenced the developing brains of us Gen Xers when we were kids or teens. Canadian filmmaker David Cronenberg is one of the all-time greats in the field of body horror, with works such as The Fly, Naked Lunch, and Existenz. His career took off in the late 70s and early 80s with a bunch of well-received independent films, including Shivers, The Brood, and Scanners. Scanners was a modest commercial hit, as well as a success with critics, and as a result, his next film, 1983's Videodrome, was given a healthy $6 million budget. Videodrome wasn't a box office success, but it made a big impression. No less an authority than Andy Warhol dubbed it the Clockwork Orange of the 1980s. Max Wren, the president of Civic TV, a Toronto-based cable television network that specializes in attention-grabbing programming saturated with sex and violence, gets a wake-up call on his television set from his assistant Bridie, advising him of his daily schedule. Bridie is played by Julie Connor, while Max is played by two-time Oscar nominee James Woods. Max heads to a hotel to meet with representatives from a Japanese production company who try to sell him a softcore porn series called Samurai Dreams. Max thinks Samurai Dreams isn't trashy enough to satiate the sensation-craving Civic TV viewers. One of the unnamed representatives is played by David Cronenberg, a former Canadian cabinet member. Civic TV uses a satellite dish to hijack TV signals from around the world in search of possible new programming. Civic TV's engineer, a man named Harlan, played by Peter Dvorsky, shows Max a few seconds of a grainy broadcast that originated in Malaysia of something called Videodrome. The footage shows a terrified woman chained to a wall before being stripped and strangled by masked assailants. Intrigued by what he assumes is a trashy new television show, Max tells Harlan to track down more of the footage. Max appears as a guest on a TV talk show alongside a radio host named Nikki Brand to discuss the effects of televised violence on viewers. Also appearing remotely via television is a media prophet named Dr. Brian Oblivion, who has radical ideas about how television is destined to reshape our perception of reality. Dr. Oblivion is played by Jack Creeley, while Nikki is played by Blondie frontwoman and rock icon Debbie Harry. Max argues that the violent and oversexed programming offered by Civic TV gives viewers a harmless outlet for their darkest fantasies. Nikki disagrees, believing Civic TV's programs encourage a state of dangerous overstimulation, though she's very open about her own attraction to sex and violence and her attraction to Max. Harlan tracks down more footage of Videodrome in which people are violently tortured and murdered. Harlan explains to Max that the broadcast originated in Pittsburgh, though the signal was routed through Malaysia to hide its origins. Max takes Nikki back to his place where she paws through his stack of Betamax tapes in search of porn. When she pops in the Videodrome tape, she's mesmerized by the combination of extreme sex and violence. At the Civic TV offices, Max meets with a producer named Masha, played by Lynn Gorman, who tries to sell him some softcore porn to air on his channel. Max thinks everything she has to offer is too tame and sweet. He asks her to find out more about Videodrome. Nikki decides to head to Pittsburgh to audition for Videodrome. Max thinks this is a bad idea. She responds by stabbing out a lit cigarette on her breast, which pretty much puts an end to the argument. Over lunch with Masha, Max learns that Videodrome is not a scripted series. It's snuff television, motivated by a dangerous yet unknown political philosophy. Masha believes Dr. Oblivion is somehow connected to it. Max visits the cathode ray mission, where unhoused people are required to watch a grainy television broadcast while getting a free meal. Max introduces himself to Bianca Oblivion, Brian Oblivion's daughter, who believes the mission's guests need to be exposed to television to prepare themselves to re-enter society. Max wants to talk to Dr. Oblivion about Videodrome. Bianca, who is played by Sonia Smits, tells Max her father communicates solely via videotapes, which he records in advance and sends to people who wish to converse with him. As Max watches more Videodrome in his apartment, Bridie drops off a tape that was delivered from Brian Oblivion to the studio. Max fantasizes about hitting Bridie, then becomes increasingly confused as to what's hallucination and what's reality. On the videotape, Oblivion tells Max that television and video are shaping minds in North America. To the viewer, whatever is seen on the television screen becomes indistinguishable from lived experience. As Oblivion puts it, television is reality, and reality is less than television. At the end of his message, Oblivion is strangled by a masked assailant, who turns out to be Nikki. Nikki speaks directly to Max through the television. The television begins to pulse organically, and a mesmerized Max kisses Nikki's lips, which protrude out from the television screen. At the cathode ray mission, Bianca tells Max Videodrome was designed by her father and his business partners to induce a brain tumor in anyone who views it. This is why Max is having having hallucinations. Dr. Oblivion died 11 months ago, leaving behind a library of thousands of recorded messages on videotapes. Oblivion envisioned Videodrome and the hallucinations it generates as the next stage in human evolution. He thought his partners were perverting his intention, and when he tried to take control of Videodrome, they killed him. On video, Oblivion tells Max that the growth in his brain isn't a tumor, it's a new organ that allows him to perceive a new reality. While sitting on his couch and playing with his handgun, Max hallucinates a distinctly vaginal-looking slit running along his abdomen. For some damn fool reason, he sticks the gun inside the slit until it disappears inside him. A limousine sent by Barry Convex, the owner of a powerful conglomerate named Spectacular Optical, which designs everything from eyeglasses to guided missile systems, arrives to pick up Max. In the limo, Max watches a videotaped message from Barry Convex, played by Leslie Carlson, who explains that his company invented Videodrome. Though it wasn't supposed to be released to the world yet, Max viewed the intercepted signal by mistake. In the back room of a Spectacular Optical shop, Barry Convex hooks Max up to a machine that can record his hallucinations and treat the damage inflicted on him by Videodrome. While connected to the machine, Max hallucinates himself inside an episode of Videodrome where he tortures Nikki and Masha. Max wakes up in his own apartment and discovers Masha's bound and gagged corpse in bed beside him. Suspecting he's hallucinating, Max summons Harlan to his apartment, and sure enough, by the time Harlan arrives, Masha's body is gone. At Civic TV, both Barry Convex and Harlan confront Max. Harlan admits he never picked up a pirate broadcast of Videodrome via satellite. Convex gave him the footage to deliberately expose Max to the Videodrome signal. Convex plans to use Videodrome to infect and kill anyone depraved enough to watch programs like Videodrome. Spectacular Optical wants to broadcast Videodrome on Civic TV to rid North America of moral decay. Convex whips out a Betamax tape, which is pulsating organically, and inserts it into the slit in Max's abdomen. The tape programs Max to be a mindless assassin who will kill his fellow Civic TV executives so Spectacular Optical can take over the channel. When Max tries to remove the tape, he instead extracts the handgun, which begins to merge with the flesh of his hand. Brainwashed by the tape into doing Barry Convex's bidding, Max walks into the Civic TV boardroom and murders his partners. He then breaks into the cathode ray mission because the tape is also urging him to murder Bianca Oblivion. Before he can shoot Bianca, she shows him footage of Nikki's murder on the Videodrome set. Max is riddled with bullets fired by a gun that sticks out from the television screen, though the bullets do him no harm. According to Bianca, this has destroyed the tape in his abdomen and has turned him into what she calls the video word made flesh. Max is now programmed to do Bianca's bidding, and she orders him to deliver death to Videodrome. Max trails Harlan to the Spectacular Optical shop where he meets a salesman named Brawley, played by calypso musician King Cosmos. In the back room, Harlan tries to insert another tape into Max's abdomen to program him to do more of Videodrome's bidding, but Harlan's hand turns into a grotesque weapon that explodes, blowing him to bits. Max then heads to a Spectacular Optical presentation at a banquet hall. He shoots Barry Convex, then yells, "Death to Videodrome, long live the new flesh." Barry's corpse erupts into multiple bloody tumors that tear his body apart. Max heads to a deserted stretch of the harbor and boards an abandoned boat. There's a television set on the boat, and Nikki speaks to him directly through the screen, telling him he must now transform himself into the new flesh to destroy Videodrome. Max does Nikki's bidding by shooting himself in the head. Those brilliantly gruesome makeup effects are the work of Rick Baker, whose grotesque and imaginative effects we've already seen in John Carpenter's The Thing, which, like Videodrome, is a classic of the body horror genre. Videodrome's ominous and unsettling score was composed by Howard Shore, a frequent Cronenberg collaborator who would rise to fame in the early 2000s for his compositions for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Videodrome is a wild ride. Every single thing that happens in the film after Max watches those first few grainy moments of Videodrome footage early on might be real or might be a hallucination. That includes Max's entire relationship with Nikki, his encounters with Bianca Oblivion, and his assassinations of his co-workers plus Barry Convex and Harlan. But the question of what's real and what's a hallucination isn't one we're meant to try to answer, because in the world of the film, hallucinations are reality. As Dr. Oblivion tells Max, once you've seen something on television, it becomes part of your lived experience. Cronenberg came up with the idea for Videodrome from his childhood memories of tuning the television in his native Canada to a dead channel and picking up fragments of static-filled broadcasts from the United States. I have very strong memories of this kind of thing, tuning the television to a dead channel high up on the UHF band and catching confusing fragments of something and having that sense that I was watching something I wasn't intended to see. This is something all of us North American Gen Xers probably remember well, but throughout the early 80s, there was a mounting concern that our exposure to televised sex and violence was damaging us in some way. A bunch of factors contributed to that concern, like the FCC's deregulation of the media in 1980 and the 1982 National Institute Institute of Mental Health study on the effects of televised violence on children's behavior. But the factor most relevant to Videodrome is the growing presence of cable television and VCRs in households throughout North America. Cable networks weren't subject to the same standards in place for the broadcast networks, and our newfound ability to flip the channel and watch softcore porn or violent action films at any time of day, or to rent videos that were deemed too obscene to be shown in theaters and bring them right into our homes, caused some concern by some parties that viewers would become either aggressive or desensitized by nonstop exposure to salacious content. On the surface, Videodrome seems to be parroting those concerns. Exposure to Videodrome, which is a weapon disguised beneath a veneer of extreme sexualized violence, will infect you and ultimately destroy you. But the film itself contains substantial amounts of sex and violence, not to mention gore, so obviously Cronenberg isn't fretting about desensitizing or corrupting viewers. The whole issue of societal decay is a red herring. The film isn't interested in passing judgment on those who watch violent material or those who are repelled by it. But Videodrome, like cable television or videocassettes, is very much a Pandora's box. Once you've added it to your life, there's no going back. Videodrome is now a part of you. Depending on your perspective, Videodrome has either damaged you, like a tumor growing unchecked in your body, or has transformed you, like a new organ that enables you to see the world in different ways. Surreal, grotesque, and mind-blowing, the film has a similar effect on viewers. Once you've seen it, everything you experienced while watching Videodrome becomes a part of you, and you are no longer the same person you were when you first inserted that tape in your VCR, which is hopefully not located inside your abdomen. Next time, I'm looking at Say Anything, Cameron Crowe's classic teen romance, which inspired millions of Gen Xers to associate undying romantic devotion with hoisting a boombox over your head. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I will hopefully see you back here for that.